Hi guys, I'm Blackie.
And I'm Bear.
And this is Bear's Always number 48.
48.
48. We're getting on up, getting close to retirement age now. I mean, wow. Reason we want to do this video is something to just hit the headlines in the last couple of days. Something I don't see how they can do, but apparently now the governmental powers that be are saying that you shouldn't have your own gardens or grow your own food, and how they want to block companies from selling seed and tomatoes and everything else, that you don't need to be doing this because, quote, quote, it produces too much carbon emissions to grow your own food.
Well, that's the same reason that they don't want you to, they're buying out whole cattle herds and killing them. They're not putting them down and processing the meat and sending them to the store. They are digging a hole, running them in the hole, and shooting them.
Well, one of the dumbest things I've heard, but apparently this is a real thing, and it's one of the reasons why China and all these places have been buying up farmland. And those of you that are old enough to remember, this started out back in the 80s, where they said your factory produces too much emissions, and so you got to scrub it or fix it. Well, just by the nature of whatever your factory produces, there's only a finite point you can get it down to for whatever it is. But your number's still too high. Well, you can buy somebody else's extra points to lower your score. And so you would go to another factory that was easily able to stay under it with very minimum effort, and you could buy their extra points. And this was your quote, quote, penalty for polluting, was you'd pay for that. Now, crazy as that sounds, what they're doing is this. They say, okay, I buy this big hunk of farmland that's been raising cattle for 100 years, and I'll get rid of all the cattle. I'll count what the maximum amount of cows could actually live there, and what would be the emissions from those cows, and then I will sell that to your factory. So I don't put anything on this land, but I sell this theoretical, points over, and so that's what they're doing. They're buying it up, getting rid of the cows, and then saying, oh, we reduced emissions this month, and sell those numbers. The land's worth more selling the fake numbers than it was growing the cows.
Yeah. And part of the old ways, like we've said before, is being prepared for the off times,
The hard times.
the hard times. This is what we're talking about.
Them talking about how they ever do it. They may be able to do it in some big city area, but they're never going to do it down here in the South. Because rednecks and stuff, we will plant and do whatever we want in the woods. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, there's lots of ways through this net.
Yeah.
But nothing's official. We are not harbingers of doom. We're just saying, hey, we heard this, passing it along to you. Beware.
It would not be a bad idea if you'd ever thought about doing a garden to buy seeds.
And when you buy your seeds, buy heirloom seeds.
Yeah.
Don't buy the hybrid.
Heirloom means it produces a seed that you can turn around and plant and make another plant. Hybrids are one time only, the seed won't reproduce.
A lot of times they won't. Occasionally you might get one too, but you don't know what you're going to get. It won't be the same thing that you planted, I can guarantee you that.
I've been seeing some videos of guys that were talking about planting from the grocery store.
Yeah.
And he went and picked up a bag of black-eyed peas, dried, off the grocery store shelf, planted them in his garden, and they sprouted. He took lima beans, he took Great Northerns, he took navy beans, he took not pimento beans?
Pintos.
Pinto beans, and planted a garden with them.
Yeah.
He took the scrap, he took the end of his cabbage, his lettuce, and replanted it, his onions, and replanted it. and was seeding his own garden from waste, basically.
Right.
And he was showing a 2-year cycle. He said by the end of it, he said, I've produced 60 pounds of dried black-eyed peas. You just let them grow to fruition and let them dry on the vine. And then you go out there and just pick the dried up things and shuck them out. It's just like what you get from the store. And he said you can either cook them green or just let them go till they dry out. And that's what he did. He let them dry out. And so he said, now I've got 50 pounds. I can use 40 pounds. Actually, I can use, I think he said 45 pounds I can eat, and 5 pounds I can turn around. That's enough to replant the whole dang garden again.
Yeah, always remember to put some back for what they call for seed.
Yeah.
That's what the old guys used to do, and that's what we're encouraging you to do.
How many farm shelves had them mason jars and coffee jars and whatever that had dried seeds sitting in them?
Yeah, you get you a mason jar and fill it up with black-eyed peas. You got enough for the next year or more.
Yeah. Watermelon seeds, pumpkin seeds.
Yeah, the whole 9 yards. You got to, what's a delicate way to put this? You got to get yourself ready. You guys that live in the cities, it's going to be a bit more of a challenge for you. Okay? But it can be done. You just got to take your environment and your conditions and figure out a way.
Bucket gardens on a patio work.
Bucket gardens work great.
Especially if you're growing something that, you know, A, looks good, like tomato plants or something, so that your neighbor looking over there doesn't automatically think it's, you know, marijuana or something growing. And but you can find stuff to grow in small quantities that'll help out. And the barter system. Find somebody that lives out in the country that you can make a deal with somehow. You know.
You can raise about 60 pounds of potatoes in a 5-gallon bucket.
Yeah.
You put your potting soil in the bottom, you put your seed potatoes in, and you cover them and you water them. Keep them out in the sun, and when they sprout up about that high, put you another layer of dirt, let them grow up, and they will make potatoes.
Yeah, the thing I was seeing not long ago, and it was called stealth gardening. And it was a guy that lives not far from a major city. He's out in the country, but he says, I'm about a 12-hour walk from a major city with a couple million people in it. So if people get hungry and starve, they're going to come out here. But what he did was he parks his tractor that he uses with a bush hog to cut his land right along the fence right there. He went out along the fence row and he dug up the dirt, he planted potatoes. Then when they got coming up, he put on another layer, and then he put hay over the top of it. So it just looks like it's an area. There's nothing there to look at on the other side of the tractor. And he said, nobody knows I'll probably grow up 200 pounds of potatoes right there. You know, if they come and clean out everything in the house, I know when that comes to fruition, I got a year's worth of potatoes.
Oddly enough, I read somewhere, I think it was a year or so ago, that there's enough nutritional value in just your common potato, skin and all, to keep you sustained.
Well, the potato famine, look at Ireland was living off of potatoes.
Yes.
Literally, that's all they had was potato. And
then the blight came through.
People starved to death because they didn't have any alternative to go through. And we're not saying to do that, but it would pay you, like, got to remember when we started this 2 or 3 years ago.
Coming up on 2 years.
2 years, where we mentioned this is what we're seeing, you may want to, and then there's a headline 5 or 6 months later. Now they're saying they're wanting to stop gardening, that they're wanting to outlaw you be able to preserve and put up fruit. They've already had it in the farming industry for years now, not letting you keep seed. You know, where they don't want you to keep seed. In fact, a lot of the hybrids can't be turned around and replanted, especially in corn. And the reasoning that I have heard unofficially is because the hybrid that it is, they have put something in it to keep rodents and stuff from wanting to eat it. It's actually toxic to rodents. Well, the problem with it is each time you plant that seed, it becomes more toxic. And I don't know this to be fact, guys, but why they don't want you to keep seed is about third planting of it, it'll be toxic to humans. And so they don't want it. They want it, you buy new seed, so it's one generation in. But hybrids, you know, everything's hybridized. I like heritage stuff. I've already been talking to the wife, here it is February, and I'm already getting ready to do, and the last one, the one before last, we talked about I'm wanting to do my garden, get it going, you know, go ahead and get my tomato plants, get the stuff. What I'm going to do different this year, what I'm going to get going to preserve, and you and I have talked about that lady out of wherever it is, in Russia, Ukraine, or whatever, she does that water bath in jars. I want to try some of that.
I'm gonna do it a little differently. She water baths for 3 hours. I'm going to pressure can for about 90 minutes. It's actually, and there's a recent video where she's talking, and of course I'm reading the printout at the bottom. But she talks about how water bathing is only good for about 6 months to maybe a year, and if you pressure can it, it's good for up to 2 years, maybe longer.
I can remember when the family canned, and I can remember things being canned that it was 3 or 4 years later and it was still good when we ate it.
And I've seen folks online who are eating stuff that was canned 12 years ago, and it's perfectly fine. You know, as long as your seal is maintained, your food should be good. Another thing that we're going to expand into is freeze drying. You can take raw meat and you can freeze dry your raw meat, and then when you get ready to cook it, you just rehydrate it. Doesn't take a whole lot of water to do that, but you can rehydrate it. But that keeps for 25 years. And you can, like, you know, if Mama cooks a good cherry cobbler, you can, in theory, freeze dry the cherry cobbler. And then 25 years later, celebrate and serve it. Of course, after you rehydrate it and warm it up.
I remember it was a kick for quite a while in the backpacking to freeze dry and dehydrate and make your own rehydration meals. A, to save cost, and B, to save weight and all like that, because you could, there was a guy that used to have a good YouTube channel that he did that, and he would say, I will make up chili, and I will take a big pot of chili, I will eat 2 or 3 meals worth of it, this much I'll put in the freezer, and then this much I go ahead and dehydrate, and that becomes my camping chili.
Yes.
Because once it gets dehydrated, he uses like a seal meal like we use, and he sucks all the air out of it, and all he got to do is reconstitute with water. You know, add boiling water to it, and it's right back to being edible chili.
Right. The Mountain Trails food that you can buy at the big box, it's freeze dried. And that's what we're talking about doing on a
Small scale.
Yeah, a micro level.
Well, it's like, you know, we've talked about this in videos, bartering. I'm good at fishing, but I like fish, but I don't want to eat it not nearly as much as I did as a boy. But Bear's got a big family, and so I'll do some fishing, and then I will trade him. Remember, he was talking about having a pork loin sliced up. I'll trade him fish for some pork loin. A barter system, because me and my wife can do the pork loin bit, but I have no problem spending the weekend getting a big mess of fish and cleaning them and getting them ready. You know, and then handing them off to you, and then we can freeze dry, I mean, we can seal and meal them and etc. I'm planning on in March getting the new deep freezer. And that's when I will start wanting to fill it up. My goal is to have a year's worth of food put up in multiple ways, both canned and etc. Now, you're going to have to help me with the canning.
Oh, no problem.
Because like I said, I've assisted canning, you know, and I've got the understanding of it, but I don't have enough hands-on to trust it myself. But
Yeah.
I want to be able to put up some meat, put up some stuff, and like we saw that lady doing a whole meal.
Right.
in one thing, just do it as a canning system, be able to put those up on the shelf and have a year's worth of food put back.
Okay, now, you've got to remember that it takes, I think it's 900 pounds of food per person per year. Now, if you've got littles, you can divide that. It probably only takes about half as much food for a child under the age of 10 as it does for an adult. If you have kids that are like 10 and up, they're gonna need the whole volume. People don't understand that amount of volume. You know, 900 pounds is a lot of surface area.
That's the biggest thing with NASA, and then talk about us going places, is how much food you'd have to send.
Well, what they're trying to do is get around that with what's called hydroponics, which is growing a lot of food in a small space, like it's in a moist environment, like a watery environment, where just the roots are exposed to the air, but they get sprayed with vitamins and minerals and that stuff, fertilizer, water, and they actually can grow. If you ever get a chance to go down to Disney World, in Epcot, they have an entire thing, a display set up where they're doing hydroponics. They've got them where the roots are in the water. They've got them where the roots are suspended in the air and just get misted a couple of times a day. That's the approach they're taking about going to Mars.
Yeah, I've seen thing of one of the things that Musk proposed was you would send a grow ship, and it would go, and there'd be a habitat ship that would go there and land first, and it would, through robotics, create pre-existing dome shelters and etc., put them together, and make sure they were air sealed, had oxygen, the whole 9 yards. Then there'd be a grow ship that would go in orbit, and it would sit there and put itself in orbit of Mars, and it would grow food. And once we had 5 years worth of food growed, we would go and rendezvous, the astronauts would rendezvous with the grow ship, transfer the grow ship, land on the planet on the grow ship, and have the habitat, have everything, have 5 years worth of food, and then when it was time to leave, the replacement crew that's coming, they would come into orbit. There'd be another grow ship that they'd bring, and so every 2 years and every 3 years you'd bring a new grow ship down. You always had 5 years worth of food, which I thought pretty innovative. Yeah, that's how I'd do it. I mean, when they decided to shove off and go across the ocean to come over here and live, that was a big question of how much food, how long you're going to live, you know, and that they struggled with it.
And what would you find when you got here?
Yeah, starvation was a common thing in the early pioneers coming over here because they knew how to grow and do whatever here. But once they went 400 miles over yonder on the other side of that mountain range, corn didn't grow over there, or whatever didn't happen, and they really struggled. So you've got to be able to adapt to your environment, you know, and find out what works for you. So, go ahead.
All of this NASA speculation is fascinating. We grew up with Gemini and Apollo, so
Yeah.
we completely understand. Okay.
But we got a background of living history, knowing about the pioneers that came over here and went west. So
Yes, we did.
So from a pioneer mindset of knowing how they came into the woods and lived down here against the animal and fauna and the plants, and how they figured out what they could cultivate and everything else. When you start talking, NASA starts talking about going to Mars, it's the pioneer mindset comes back with, how do we grow something on that?
Absolutely.
How do you dig in, how do you build, how do you whatever? It's exactly the same things they face getting over here. We invented the log cabin in America. Europe didn't do log cabins. They did thatched roofs and wattle and daub mud walls. And they got over here and found out we had way too much rain, and that rotted out too easy.
Yeah.
So,
Another thing is I say we, everybody, all of us, need to be able to have a fallback. And there could come a point where trucks can't get to your store.
yeah.
Okay? So what you gonna do? Who you gonna call? You've got to be able, we've talked about being self-sufficient in your medical. We've talked about being self-sufficient in your food, in your water. You know, there's a lot of bases that have to be covered, and you are responsible for covering your bases.
We're seeing right now in the reports that's coming out of the big cities like Detroit, Chicago, Philadelphia, about these grocery deserts of where all the grocery stores have got so tired, or any kind of store have got so tired of crime that they just pulled up and left. And you've got people that are having to drive 30, 40 miles to get to a grocery store in a city, you know. So you got to drive 30, 40 miles to find a functioning grocery store. And that will only get worse, you know.
And that's what we're talking about, okay? You can go in now, and when you go through the grocery store doing your just regular shopping, throw a couple of extra packs of beans in the buggy. A couple of boxes of potatoes. You know, the dried mashed potatoes.
Practice cooking with them. Find out how to cook them, what
Absolutely.
you like to do. The worst thing that could happen was, yes, you went and built up this larder, and you didn't practice with it, and now you're forced to use it, and you don't know how to cook it.
Right. You can find canned ham and canned chicken. Now, after a while, it's still good to eat, but sometimes canned chicken has a funny little taste to it. Yeah. It's still good, but it's got this kind of metallic taste, maybe.
Tabasco and barbecue sauce
Yes.
is your friend.
Yes, it is.
Learn how to make your own barbecue sauce.
If push comes to shove, buy you a can of Vienna sausages.
Yeah.
Put them up in the cabinet.
Yeah.
I have done that, and we encourage you to do that. Throw it. You don't have to load up the first day, but as you're going to the grocery store, buy those extra bags of beans. And something that you need to do: put them in the freezer. Okay, when you get home, put them in the freezer. Let them sit there for at least 48 hours. Because that kills any bugs or stuff that might be in them. Okay, that's why you wash your dried beans before you cook them.
And make sure there's no rocks in there.
Yeah, make sure there's no rocks.
The machine, as it's picking them, sometimes picks up small pebbles.
They do, and when they're processing them at the plant, they will, they won't get all the stuff out.
And so it's always best, we would always take the dried ones, like you said, they went in the freezer, and then they came out of the freezer after a couple days, and they normally went into a glass jar with a screw top lid.
Right.
And then when it was getting ready to cook them, you poured them out on a piece of paper or whatever, and you went through right quick, made sure there was no rocks, because you did not want to be eating and suddenly bite down on a rock.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
Yeah, because here in Alabama, we've got iron ore everywhere, and it's these little bitty iron pebbles, that's small, like a lot of times you can get them half the size of a Tic Tac.
Yeah.
And they get mixed in with them things as it's going through the process, and you'll bite down, your teeth lock down on something you ain't crushing.
Yeah, the USDA actually has guidelines for allowing debris.
Yeah, how much debris can be in there.
And debris can be anything from mouse hair to roach wings to dirt.
That's the reason we wash them.
That's the reason that you wash all that stuff. But as I've been saying, when you go to the grocery store, throw you a couple of cans of meat in your basket. You don't have to load up on them. Just a couple of them,
Little at a
a
time.
little bit at a time. A mouse can eat an elephant if he'll do it one bite at a time.
And pick an area in a cabinet or whatever
Yeah,
to put that in there. Go ahead and get you a Sharpie and write the date on it,
yeah,
so you know when you got it. Put it in there, and once a month, open that up, pull whatever's the oldest out, rotate that into the food stock, and keep adding your stuff, and your larder will grow that way.
yeah. You can also. I have seen these little black can things, lid like a tall plastic lid, and you put them on top of your jar with a lid under it. You mash a button and it will vacuum seal the jar. Well, that's what we're talking about, stuff like that doing with these beans. After you get them out of the freezer, put them in the jar. Invest in one of those vacuum sealer lids.
They're not that expensive.
No,
Battery operated, does a good job.
yeah, just pop it on there, hit it, put an oxygen absorber in the jar, okay? And then hit the button and vacuum seal the jar and you're done. You're done. And just continue to do that and build up your store. You can also, please don't forget, when you're in the store, throw an extra pack of toilet paper in there, an extra roll of paper towels. It has
Make
not
sure
been.
you got plenty of salt,
Yes.
sugar, pepper, all those things, because a lot of times they forget about that, and they focus on this.
Yeah,
Seasoning makes a huge difference, especially when I'm eating the same thing 3 times this week. I can spice it a little different, and at least make it taste a little different.
yeah. When you buy your pepper, buy peppercorns and crush up your own peppercorns, okay? Those little peppercorns will last indefinitely.
Put them on a glass saucer or a little metal tray.
Yeah.
Take a wooden spoon, put your thumb in the spoon part, and just rock back and forth. You can crush them down fine and
Right.
use them that way. Great flavor, great taste.
And if you happen to have a mortar and pestle in your kitchen, you can use that too.
Yep.
In addition, and it's something that I have thought about for years, and they don't really recommend it, but it's the same stuff. In your local feed store, you'll find these 50-pound blocks of compressed salt. It's just salt. It's exactly the same stuff that you find in the box from Morton's that says kosher.
It just hadn't been ground fine.
It's just been, they take the slurry and compress it down and make a solid block. Well, chip you off some and put it in your mortar and pestle and grind it up, and you've got all the salt you'll need.
50-pound block will last you.
50-pound block will last you forever.
We used to use stock salt when I was a boy, and I worked for Mudge Watkins. He had a fruit stand, and we boiled peanuts every day. And in the afternoon, everybody'd show up wanting bags of boiled peanuts, and we used stock salt. We didn't use regular table salt.
Right.
It was stock salt that you give the cows or something.
Right, normal table salt has iodine in it.
Yep, this don't.
A lot of people are allergic to iodine.
Even though we need it.
Yes, even though you need it. Some people are allergic to it. At home, I only cook with kosher because there's no iodine in it.
Yeah.
To season the food once it gets to the table, we use iodized. But as far as the cooking goes, I cook with kosher. I challenge you. Find you some kosher or something that is non-iodized. Put a little bit in your hand and taste it. Okay. Well, do the iodized first. Okay. Put a little bit in your hand and taste it. You will taste the iodine in the back of your mouth. It's a metallic taste. It's there, but you're kind of wrapping your mind around it. Then rinse your mouth out and do the same thing with kosher or non-iodized salt. It's just salt.
How about white pepper?
Yeah.
And other things, cayenne, all kinds of stuff. Learn your spice rack. And that was when you go to these small old kitchens like we grew up in, Granny would have 20 different spices in these little bitty glass jars up there. And that was her thing, was you could take the same meal you cook every Tuesday and spice it differently every time, where it tasted different.
Right. That's the same story that we tell about how you can take a box of Bisquick and make 52 different items out
50
of it.
dang things. Learn Bisquick.
Yeah, you can make biscuits, you can make breads, you can make cakes, you can make rolls, you can pancakes,
cookies,
yes,
tortillas.
from that one little box of
Yeah.
stuff.
Just what you're doing. And it's amazing what you can do with the leftovers of it, because you learn how to recycle stuff where the leftover biscuits would be torn up and made into another dish. So yeah.
We have a store here in town that would, they don't do it anymore, they've been sold and changed hands, but they would take all of their meat from the previous day and stick it in the freezer. And then they would make a breakfast casserole. They would take the old biscuits and tear them up in a bowl, and they would dice up the leftover meat, the chicken patties, the bacon, the sausage, the whatever. They would dice up that meat and put it in the bowl with some cheese, and then put in like cream of mushroom soup, or cream of chicken soup, or heavy cream, and mix it all up into a slurry and put it into a pan and bake it. Put some cheese on the top of it and bake it. It would make your tongue beat your brain slam out of your head.
Good.
And
You didn't throw nothing away, you found another use for it.
right, and they sold it by the pound.
Yeah.
They literally did, until they got sold and changed hands, and the new owners didn't do it anymore.
Yeah. Well, brother, I think we need to call it quits on that.
Yeah.
Got a time limit.
And from Two Old Scouts, be prepared.
Yeah.
Please be prepared.
Keep an eye on it, see what they're saying, and listen to what they're trying to do,
Yeah.
and be prepared.
Yeah. In a situation where the fecal material impacts the rotating oscillator,
Yeah.
nobody's coming to save you.
You got to take care of you.
You got to take care of you, and by taking care of you, you take care of your spouse, your kids, your grandkids.
All of them.
We hope that makes sense.
And we hope none of it happens. But
Absolutely.
prepare for the worst, pray for the best.
Absolutely.
Well, till next time, guys, I'm Blackie.
And Bear.
Wishing you safe journeys. Have a great day, guys.